So do one of you guys want to start off?
Yeah, so we're starting with number 1, right?
Yes.
A quote that let me see, where's the quote at?
Okay.
So
What do you guys think, like, the attitudes, what attitudes did Americans have towards the people from Asia? Like, what do you guys say about that?
I say they had like a negative, not like positive way when Asians came to the America, because they felt like probably the Asians are going to take over and like not like take over their jobs and everything like that, but they were making it difficult for the Asian people to actually be successful around in the US.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I said. Like, they were just very negative, and they basically, like, it seemed like they didn't really want them, to come, and they didn't want, they just didn't want them to come. Like,
yeah, well, their attitudes were like they were scared of them. Not really like scared as in like they'll take their jobs, because the Chinese were like proving themselves that they were like hard workers that would work for cheap, and so they would take over most of the white people's jobs. And so they obviously didn't like that, so they would gather together and like attack these Chinese people, so they don't get their jobs taken away.
that's what I said. And yeah, they were just like, I think, they just feared them because, they didn't really know what they were capable of doing. Not in a bad way, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they could be doing things that were never, like they did things that were never really, that never happened. Yeah.
Yeah, a few.
What social events of violence occurred throughout, like, when that happened?
Oh, I know.
I think the violence that occurred was just, kind of forget.
There's like a mob of people.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah. Okay. So there was like, I guess you can call them like a white terrorist that were in the West, and they launched hundreds of anti-Chinese programs, just to drive out the Chinese. And so what they would do there is that they would like go to these people's like Chinatown, whatever, their homes, and then they would attack them and burn their like houses down and like kill all the men that would live there and take their belongings as well.
Yeah. So that was like some of the violence.
Yeah, just to like drive them out.
And
then see what else is there? Legal discrimination. The California enacted a racist legislations that limited Chinese employment and prevented interracial marriage.
Oh yeah.
So these Chinese men couldn't marry a white lady.
And I think it also, I think it's excluded them from buying land.
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
It did exclude them from buying land. They couldn't do it unless they were like naturalized. They couldn't become naturalized either.
Yeah.
because the Naturalization Act, which happened in 1865, which was amended multiple times for free whites and free Africans, but it was not amended for Asians. They excluded them. So they couldn't become like citizens of the
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
Not like legally, at least,
Yeah, they also excluded like the children from going to the American schools, you know?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, those are like most of the that's like most of the facts I written down too for the discrimination that were passed.
I mean, the other one too was like the Chinese Exclusion Act. That's the biggest one.
Yeah, that is.
There
And
was
it was 1882, right?
yeah, it was signed into law in 1882 by the president at the time, which is Chester A. Arthur,
Oh wow.
which made it illegal for Chinese to come here, and the ones that were here already couldn't become American citizens, which was like really bad on their end.
Mhm.
But also it was like crazy because um, that act remained in force for 60 years. That's like a long time for like Chinese to
Yeah,
be excluded
that's
out.
a long time.
And they were also the first and only group that had been singled out as being undesirable. Undesirable. That's what white people like, I guess, like called them. They called like the Chinese undesirable as well. Um, so Asians, I remember she said this in her lecture and the video we had watched on her when she was talking about that Asians were socially excluded, like they're undesirable and unssimilable,
Yeah.
which meant like no matter what they did, they were not seen as capable of becoming American by like the white people. So the thing I found it really interesting about like the Chinese is that they kind of like they not only like help like build a lot of stuff in America, but it also kind of formed America to what it is today. Because during the 18th, 19th, and 20th like century, uh, it was questioned on who gets to be American and what it is to be an American, based on the laws and acts that were against Chinese. It just like raised questions on like what it is to be an American, and so they kind of like help form like kind of what America is today.
Yeah.
And whoever can be here, like no matter what your race or ethnicity.
Yeah. And that, like, yeah, exactly. And that goes into every, like, all races. Because without, without Asian Americans, like, there's just certain things that we wouldn't have or we wouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
So,
Like
Yeah.
for example, the Transcontinental Railroad, it wouldn't have been built unless
Yeah.
Asians helped it because they were they what? They how do I say this? They were the ones going to do like the dangerous tasks that the white people wouldn't do.
Mhm.
And yeah, because of that, they made a really big impact in today's society now.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Also, another like interesting fact that I read was that like European Americans were the first ones that were like here, and they claimed the land to be theirs, and so they determined that it was theirs by right, and it was considered like a white man's country. So then when all those Chinese started coming, they were like, "Whoa, this is our land. What are you doing here?"
And then they like acted out and
Yeah. So um people that were like not deemed white or enslaved, segregated, expelled, or even massacred too. Okay, this is also a thing. Yeah, I remember. So there was Chinese students that also came over here, right? They came here like first, and they didn't trouble the color line, and they were automatically granted citizenship, right?
Mhm.
So since they didn't trouble the color line, everything was fine. But then after that, there was a arrival of like a mass Chinese immigrants um, during and after the gold rush that was talked about everywhere. And it triggered widespread hostility for white people because they would end up losing their jobs or getting the jobs taken from them by Chinese by a bunch of Chinese men that were coming over here. And they also like the white people what was passed like they were prevented from testifying against whites in courts because the white people were like so afraid of like them losing to the Chinese that they had to like I don't know if like pull I don't know if you call it like a law or something like that where they can't testify against them. And so I find it interesting that like when Asians first came, like they didn't trouble a color line at all, since there was like a color line that they like distinguished everyone from. But as more came, as more white people started to get uh nervous and like scared for their job getting taken away due to a Chinese man, they also they viewed Asians as colored now. But
Yep,
like
because they were like not because they weren't doing what the like white people, they weren't. But no, I get what you're saying. Like
yeah,
it,
yeah,
yeah,
like they were now viewed as colored just because they were scared of them losing their job to them.
yeah, exactly. And that's what like that's what discriminated them right away, like because
Yeah,
of what the white people, got upset about or whatever.
Them living in,
exactly.
they think they were gonna get taken over, but they all just wanted a better life.
Exactly. Yeah. They weren't
Yeah,
trying to harm anybody. Literally, they weren't. But that's what they thought. And they didn't like the fact that things were going to change, because they wanted it to stay the way they wanted it to be the way they wanted it to be.
yeah. When they first came and found the land.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, hey, this is we do. They're like, we deem this stuff as our stuff. Like, you're coming in and you want to take my job or take my pay and everything. Okay. That's right. Okay, so this president in 1866, it was President Andrew Johnson, wanted to grant birthright citizenship to ethnic Chinese people, and so it was debated for Congress whether these groups actually deserved citizenships. And after a long debate, Congress determined that the native-born Chinese and other Asians are admissible. So some Chinese were granted citizenship after a little while of being excluded from a lot of things.
So what I found was also interesting was in World War II, or on World War II, also set in motion a day that ended the legal what's it called? What's that word? Exclusion. I don't know, of Asian Americans. So like it ended the. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but
I know what you're talking about. I read
yeah.
it. I see
Okay,
it.
okay. It ended. I think it ended the whole thing with I think Roosevelt's administration.
Yeah, it was the other words like that. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. This was also a thing that happened in 1875. It was called the Page Law, and it prevented entry into the country of undesired immigrants. That included Asian women that were suspected of being prostitutes.
Oh yeah. Okay. I
So
remember.
Asian women were like, they couldn't come into the country because they suspected them of being a prostitute. And the only way they were able to get into here was if they had like their father or like their husband for proof.
Yeah. For like and proof of having someone, which is like kind of stupid, you know?
Yeah, someone here that was like a citizen.
Yeah.
And then they had, I remember.
Sorry. I was just gonna say most of them were just coming, for a better life, like everybody else.
Yeah. And I think it was called Angel's Island. I'm not sure if it was called Angel's Island, where the women were detained if they like didn't get into the country. I think it was called Angel's Island.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Right. And you would have to go there in order to like, I guess like inspection to get into America. But it would take forever for people to get in, and like the time that they were there, they would get like beaten up and just treated poorly for being Chinese. And not only that, but like if they were to like leave the country with like their children that were born in the U.S. and they were automatically citizens, and then they will come back, they will need to for like the parents, they would need to like verify that they're actually citizens and like wait that long process. But the children that were born there already deemed citizens can automatically just go through, and that would just separate families for a long period of time, which was like really interesting to me how they
Yeah, that's
would,
very
that
interesting.
they would do that.
Yeah, because like you don't like separating families was like I knew that happened a lot back then.
Yeah,
You know? And especially just yeah, it really like separating and that was that mostly in that happened in the US, right? Or was
yeah,
it right? Okay, okay.
yeah. And then so the Exclusion Act prevented skilled and unskilled Chinese laborers for 10 years to like come over. But then they extended the exclusion with these other two acts that were called the Scott Act, which was enforced in 1888, and then the Geary Act in 1892. And it just basically extended the initial Chinese Exclusion Act, and like um I think it added more like a couple more things, so like Chinese were not able to come, to prevent Chinese from coming. So those two acts. And then in order to uh, prevent, what was it? It was like, how do I say this? So from when Asian male immigrants would come over, they enforced an act that was called the Cable Act that was from 1922 to 1931, and it singled out American-born Japanese and other Asian women for them to lose their citizenship if they married a male Chinese immigrant, which I found that really interesting too,
Yeah, that was
because
very
like,
interesting.
because first you have like that one act where they can't marry a white lady or else the white lady loses her citizenship, and then now they're going off of if like they're Asian and they're born there in America, they can't marry an immigrant from like a male immigrant from China.
Yeah, that's very interesting because it's like
They just like
yeah,
single bachelors, man. They couldn't catch a break.
I know they really couldn't.
It's like damn.
Either way,
But like they did that from like
it impacted everybody because like either way nobody could mess with certain people, and then like it just made the society even like spread out and like not be united.
Yeah,
yeah, because Americans wanted to keep the like Asian, I guess, population like at a certain amount. So by enforcing that act, they couldn't like grow more with the male immigrants that were coming in.
hmm
They were scared of Asians growing to become more and like take over cities and
yeah,
populate more than they did.
hmm
So they were scared of
and
overpopulation of the Chinese.
overpopulate them.
Yeah.
But I feel like if they would have just like not looked at it that way and more looked at it as like it's a good thing, it would have been different.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but the Americans, the white people, they didn't want to.
yeah, they didn't want
I
to.
get. Yeah, they feared them just because of how many there were.
Yeah, exactly. And they just wanted everything to stay the same, like
Yeah,
what they were doing.
deem it their country like the white people's country, like
Yeah.
they first deemed it in the beginning. Also, part of the Chinese exclusion law, it forced the Chinese to obtain passes, which include like the descriptions, the photographs, And they also have to find 2 white witnesses to vouch for them in order to be like entered into the country when they first come again.
Yeah.
So like that was also a really big thing that they had to do. And then question 2, what's question 2 was?
Oh yeah. Totally.
625 Wikipedia. Apologize. Oh, okay. So number 2 is basically asking, um,
So I could say I think one of the laws like I um put down, well, I put in my notes was the Page Act or the Page Act of 1875.
oh
And
yeah,
and that was it prohibited the entry of Chinese women. So we kind of talked about that.
we
But
talked about that one.
yeah, we could talk about that one. Um
So that basically prevented from like Chinese women coming
yeah, coming.
into America. So then, because then if they were entered into America, they were, oh, well, potentially you could find like a male immigrant. Also, they came from China, and then they populate more from there.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's kind of like limiting population of Chinese in a
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
So that would be like one of them.
Yeah, that would be one. And then another one we could
3 laws, huh? Because that's one. I know I have a little. That was 1882. I feel like also the Scott Act with 1882. I mean 1882, 1888. There was like the initial, they extended the initial Chinese exclusion, which was and what it did was basically where to say it prohibited Chinese laborers abroad who plan future travels from returning,
Mhm. Oh yeah, yeah.
limited Chinese laborers from coming over and like taking more jobs of
Yeah,
whites.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That one. That's 2. There's another one. Shit. Oh, what the? Oh wait. Oh, the Geary Act of it was the Geary Act 1892. That was also part of the extension of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which require Chinese people in the U.S. to carry a certificate of residence, aka like basically their green card,
Yeah.
to prove that they were citizens of the U.S. So that they can like verify that they're actually from the U.S. But those passes I felt like were hard for them to get because they had to find two white witnesses to vouch for them
Mhm.
that they were like citizens and not of the U.S.
Yeah.
So that right there just like kind of like what we talked about before when they would have to go through this inspection before getting to the U.S. So like a bunch of those uh, Chinese that didn't have like a green card basically would have to go were like sent back if they like left, or even when they were like, I guess they probably like checked them in the
Yeah.
US and see if they had them or not. And if they didn't, then they'll get rid of them to like reduce the population of the Chinese.
Yep. That's. Mhm.
So that was a thing.
Yeah.
So I think those are the three ones, right?
Yeah. Those were three.
Page Law, Scott Act, and the Geary Act.
Mhm. And there was, I know there was more, but
Yeah, like the Cable Act. That one came in like 1922.
yeah. And then the Naturalization Act, I think, of 1970.
Yeah,
And that was, I believe that one, it,
it was for like free whites and free Africans could be deemed citizens,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
not Asians. They excluded Asians on
Yeah,
that.
they excluded, yeah, yeah. So it was only,
Yeah, they excluded many times. So it was only like the free Africans, free whites that were there that were like deemed citizens,
mhm.
but like not Asians. They're considered aliens, I guess. Yeah, they call them like aliens.
Yep,
They did.
which is like we talked about last week, which is like a horrible way to discriminate them. And
Yeah.
that's not a way they should use. And they still actually use that term now. If you like, if you like apply or to like jobs and stuff, they'll like ask that, or, you know, just certain little things. And I think that shouldn't be like a way of asking for your citizenship.
Yeah, for sure.
But that we did do our 30 minutes. So I don't know if you guys have anything else you guys would like to add.
Oh, well, I guess the cool little interesting fact that I learned to where's that in 1952 the McCarran-Walter Act and ended the absolute exclusion of immigrants from Asian countries. So then they're now able to finally come without like having to go through this whole process that they had to. But it wasn't until then that they like were not excluded, which was beyond bizarre.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the only thing I had that I found, I have to say.
Okay. I'm gonna stop recording.